This week, I'm going to be playing an interview that I actually recorded on April 23rd, this time with two people, Moe Levy, who's the executive director of the Asper Foundation, and Gail Asper, who is the president of the Asper Foundation, and of course is famous for the energy that she contributes to any charitable endeavor with which she gets involved. By now, you would have had to be hiding under a rock if you were a Jewish Winnipegger and had never heard of the Asper Foundation, which was started by the late Izzy Asper in 1983. Moe Levy first met Izzy Asper in 1997, he told me, and in 1999, he became the executive director of that foundation, a position he's held ever since. The Asper Foundation has donated over $125 million to charitable causes in its history, and Moe Levy has played a vital role and a very large proportion of the money that has been distributed. Moe is a quiet individual by nature, but this coming Tuesday he's going to be honored by the Canadian Friends of the Hebrew University at a special gala which is to be held at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. During the course of the following interview, you'll hear a pretty free-ranging discussion in which Gail explains how first her father, then later she herself, became so deeply involved with the Hebrew University. You'll also hear Moe describe the particular contribution that he's made to the business school at the Hebrew University toward developing the teaching of entrepreneurial skills to Israelis. Listen carefully to his explanation how he was able to help Arab women in particular acquire the knowledge and eventually the financing that allowed them to establish several successful businesses. It's a terrific story. So I can let you talk about it, or I can ask. I think it's well known, the Asper family connection to the Hebrew University. But you were both in Israel recently, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, and what was the purpose of that?
Well, we go to Israel quite often, as if you've gone into our website, we do a lot of stuff in Israel now. And of course, as you noted, I'll turn over to Gail in terms of her dad's affection and her affection for Hebrew University, which goes back to 1983, right, when the foundation was first created.
Well, I think my dad was involved on the board of the Hebrew U, the Canadian Friends. In the 80s, he was one of the people, along with Udi Handliff and Harold Buchwald, who were big supporters of the Hebrew U, and he started, the first thing he did for the Hebrew U was to create a scholarship fund to support kids to take studies at the Rothberg Overseas School, and that's still going strong. So that was the first thing he did. And then he wanted to do something more meaningful. He was put onto the board of governors of the Hebrew University, which is the overseeing group, and went there at least once a year to their big conference. So then he wanted to do something very major for the university, and Moe was already working with the Asper Foundation at this point when he thought he would do, like the Asper School of Entrepreneurship, it's now the Stu Clark Center for Entrepreneurship at the U of M, he wanted to create a school for entrepreneurship at the Hebrew U. Mm-hmm. So we made a major donation there to start that up, and Moe was involved with all the logistics. So that was, he was on the board of governors, a big volunteer, and a big donor. And then he kind of threw that over to me. He said, I want to get off the board and do all the other things, so can you just kind of step in and be on the board of governors, which is not how it works. But the Hebrew U said, yes, we'll take Gail. So I inherited his, it's not supposed to be inherited, but I inherited his position on the board of governors. And I've been...
Around when is this?
This is...
Early
2000s.
Yeah, a decade ago.
Yeah, and so I started going to Israel.
So you're on the Board of Governors?
I'm on the Board of Governors. I'm on the executive of the Board of Governors. I've been going to Israel for these meetings for 15 years. I missed like maybe one or two meetings, and I've been sort of slightly involved with the Friends. And of course, we're absolutely delighted that the Hebrew U has chosen Moe Levy to win the Scopus Award, which is their major award to pay tribute to people who are community leaders. So that's coming up May 13th.
Yeah.
And so Hebrew U's was a really big anchor that drew us to Israel. It was at one time it was the only thing we really were doing in Israel. But since that time, over the last 20 years, and really in the last 15 years since Moe's come on board, our work in Israel has greatly expanded. And I'll turn it over to Moe to talk. Do you want to talk anything more about Hebrew U?
But just so you know, she's also getting a doctorate.
Oh, yeah,
this
right.
June.
At the Hebrew U.
At Hebrew U.
Honorary.
An honorary doctorate. At
Another Dr. Asper.
Yes, I said, you can't be serious. Like, I must be really, really old. Because, I've gone to those convocations, and there's, like, some, major, more elderly heavy hitters on the podium there. So, yes, that's this June, coming up this June.
Really?
Yeah.
What day in June? I'm going to Israel. There's a big media conference.
It's like June 9th, June 8th.
I'm going the week after.
Oh, yeah, that June is the crazy time in Israel, when it's a wonderful time to be there.
Yeah, and Chai is
when were you last there?
I was there in October.
Oh, nice. Isn't that great?
I was at the University. I did a big story. It's still online.
Okay. I probably read it.
I met with the Winnipeg students who were there. There were 5 of them, and I met with all of them and did a video. It's really great fun because, and actually, I've been in touch with one of them, Jared Ackerman.
Yes, of course.
Because not only is he a terrific kid, he's a great hockey player.
Yeah, I was reading all about him.
Okay, so that's my connection to the University. But I was a student there too.
Yeah.
Oh, were you? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you were when you were.
I was there in '75.
So how long were you gone for? Was 6 weeks or the year?
This last time?
When you were a student.
No, I was there all year.
Oh, so you did the 1 year program?
No, I wasn't. I was actually doing a master's, but I couldn't keep it up. It was too difficult. So,
I really wish I'd gone. I can't believe my dad didn't make me go. Like, I would have loved to do one of those,
go.
Yeah, I know, and there's no excuse not to.
So, Mo, now, when you go to Israel, you're representing the Asper Foundation?
Correct.
Okay. And in terms of your contributions to the Hebrew University, is it been strictly the entrepreneur school, or?
Well, again, I'm really pleased again because of Gail and Murray Pally and stuff, and they saw my kind of determination to come to every board.
Let's just explain. Murray was installed as the president, the national president, the first one outside of west of Ontario last year.
It's very good. He's
for a 3 year or 2 year term. 3 year term.
He's a wonderful volunteer, a wonderful leader, and he's really doing some great work.
So they got me on the board too. So I'm also on the board of Hebrew U. So very, very committed.
The board of governors. So the annual.
But really, I owe my connection to Hebrew University and my passion for it ever since I started. Even though I got employed by the Asper Foundation, it's something that I always wanted to make sure that they excelled in whatever they were doing in our connection.
And Mo's also taken some ideas and made them into really, really interesting projects working with the Hebrew U, like the microfinancing and the entrepreneurial training thing that was Mo's idea, and working with Rami Kleinman, I think, when he became the head of Hebrew U in Canada. So Rami's the president or the executive director, CEO of the Hebrew U, and we've known Rami for many years through JNF. So Mo and Rami got together and were thinking about doing some interesting new projects.
In fact, the dean of the school is coming here tomorrow.
Now is it a business school per se?
It's a business school.
But it's called the School of Entrepreneurship?
No,
that's something separate.
It's their business school, but it's a division of the business school.
Yeah.
So it's a program in the business school, like the Clark Center for Entrepreneurship is a division of the University of Manitoba.
Is it called the Hebrew University Business School? Does it have
it's a business school. I don't think they've ever named the school itself like we have over here, the Asper School. I think they're still kind of trying to find.
How old is the business school? Do you know?
I don't know, but it probably would go back.
Because we have the Technion just created a business school.
Yes.
And we run advertising and an article for it. They contacted us, and they've had tremendous response. Yeah. But it's a fairly low-cost school for someone from Winnipeg to go to. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. They're targeting Winnipeg. I don't know per se, but they've been running it, and I thought
there's a very strong technical
group here.
My uncle's very
Ben Gurion has a terrific business school that has the affiliation with U of M.
Yeah.
So does the Hebrew University have an affiliation? Does the business school have an affiliation with any of the Winnipeg schools?
Yeah, well, that's why Yishai is coming here tomorrow.
This is the dean of the business school.
This is the dean
Hebrew U.
because of our connection with. So
do you know this? You should be interviewing him.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because it's...
So, the Israeli dean of the business school in Jerusalem, the Hebrew U, is coming to Winnipeg and
it's very it's an opportune time because the guy hardly ever comes here. So
okay, so maybe I can set something.
So maybe you can just describe what the partnerships are.
Yeah, what are they?
So essentially, the Asper Center for Entrepreneurship at Hebrew University, we were trying to parallel what was being done over here, which is now the name change. It used to be called the Asper Center for Entrepreneurship within the Asper School of Business. So there was this, going back about 20 years or so, a lot of the business schools started to establish what we call centers for entrepreneurship to drive this whole idea and concept of entrepreneurship. So I took that model and established that at Hebrew University. So essentially what that model is to encourage students to look at entrepreneurship as an option and not just go and work for a big bank or Microsoft.
It's a whole different area of study, as you can imagine. You're an entrepreneur. You're running a business. You're trying to, you've got to make sure you get the right amount of capital. It's not like going into the accounting department at Great West Life. If you want to start a business, you have to understand banking, government regulations, media relations.
If there would be one country in the world that you would think would be able to teach us something about entrepreneurship and venture capital and startup companies and high tech,
you have to remember
Israel.
That's only in the last decade, though.
Yeah.
Really, I've read Startup Nation, for example, and it's only in basically the Russian Aliyah caused a huge sort of spike in technology companies. When you look at Israel in the 1970s and 80s, it was basically almost like third world. It changed really dramatically.
It was farming, it was plastic factories.
Actually, Netanyahu has to get credit because he instituted a lot of financial reforms that made it tax-wise and also in terms of giving incentives to entrepreneurials.
But you have to make sure that your educational institutions support what people want to do. And so, yes, if we are known as the Startup Nation, the world of entrepreneurship is changing, and if I were a student and I wanted to go and start a business, I would want to take a few courses on just to know what the pitfalls are.
Sure.
Don't reinvent the wheel.
So did you emulate the University of Manitoba model?
Yes, very much so.
And which you were in large part responsible for creating.
Yeah, I created that really in the 1980s, even before Izzy got involved. I created almost the entire entrepreneurship model.
Before it was called the Asper School of Business.
Mo was one that convinced Dad, once it was established, to put more money into it and make it a really meaningful center. And then Stu Clark came along with a really, really, really big gift, and we said, Stu, if you want to put that money in, we'll take our name off. We got the business school, and that's how it changed from Asper to Stu Clark. And we were very happy to stand back and let him invest his money. Stu Clark's an amazing, amazing donor to the campus.
He's given how much? $4 million to the museum?
$5.
Yeah. So he increased it.
But he's also given $9 to the Asper School of Business.
Really? And he's a Calgary oil man.
Yeah, but he's Winnipeg.
From Winnipeg.
Winnipeg
born, yes.
Calgary oil man.
I saw him at one
with a Winnipeg heart of gold.
Yeah, an amazing guy. So, so essentially I created that center, and I was instrumental, if I can just blow my own horn over here. I created the whole entrepreneurship idea within the business school.
Here and there.
Yeah, here and there. But here primarily because at that time, I went through Commerce MBA. Not once was the word entrepreneur ever mentioned. Believe me, if it had, and maybe my course would have been very different in life. Because I was just trained to go and work in government, which is what I did, or a really big organization. I interviewed for banks, I interviewed for Scott Paper, those kind of. I never even, the word entrepreneur was not mentioned even once. It was only after I got into the government and started to work with entrepreneurs that I kind of got a feel for and appreciation for what these guys do and how they think, and it's a fascinating history in itself about how businesses are created. Very few succeed, and those that succeed do really do well. So I created that, and then for their 20th anniversary of Can West, Izzy was looking to see what he could do for the business school. He saw the Center for Entrepreneurship list. He said, I still have that picture, by the way, of you giving Jerry Gray $1 million to kind of create the Asper Center. So it was one of those.
This is in the 1990s?
Yeah, this was late 1990s, 1997, okay. Yeah. And then after that, like Gail said, Stu Clark a few years later came in. But that allowed us to hire Rob Warren, who you probably know. Mm-hmm. Rob became the executive director. And really, he single-handedly, when you look at it, put the business school here on the map in terms of business plan competition.
We'll return to the rest of my interview with Moe Levy and Gail Asper in a few minutes. But before we do that, I wanted to play part of a song featuring world-famous Chazan and, of course, former Winnipegger Herschel Fox singing something called Where Do I Go? I also interviewed Herschel and Judy Fox this past week and hope to bring that very funny interview to you one of these coming weeks. By the way, I'll be doing a write-up based on that interview in the May 28th issue of the Jewish Post and News. I should mention that Herschel and Judy Fox will be performing at Mamaloshen this year for the very first time on Monday, June 23rd. Tickets go on sale tomorrow, as a matter of fact, and you can get them at the Rady Jewish Community Center. Now, here's Herschel singing Where Do I Go?
These words need no introduction.
Tell me where can I go? There's no place I can see. Where to go? Where to go? Every door is closed for me. To the left, to the right. It's the same in every land. There is nowhere to go, and it's me who should know. Won't you please understand? Welchen answer me? It's again. Es ist verschlossen jede Tür. Tür rechts, Tür links. Oder so in jedem Land. Ja, juckt mir nichts und mir wieder so gehen. Wie ein soll gehen. In 49, Leo Full added this verse. Now I know where to go. Where my folks proudly stand. Let me go. To Israel, my precious land. No one left, no more right. It's my land, and the sea, the light. I am proud, can't you see? For at last, the Jewish people are free. No more wandering.
That was Herschel Fox singing Where Do I Go? By the way, Judy told me during the course of our interview that her voice is much better than Herschel's. So if that didn't fail to really move you, in the next show that I have, I'm going to be playing Judy singing one of her songs. And together, by the way, they are a marvelous duo. I'm really looking forward to their performance at Mamaloshen. But now we return to my interview with Moe Levy and Gail Asper.
When was the business school created? Because it was the Faculty of Commerce
Yes.
And then the MBA program wasn't instituted until when, the 80s?
I was one of the first graduates of the MBA program. This was in 1975.
75, so it's fairly old now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so I was the second year of MBA grads when no one even knew what an MBA was. Really.
But the Asper School was created in the 80s?
It was, 1938.
Oh,
No, the Asper School.
Oh, when it became Asper?
It became the Asper School.
It became Asper School in 2001.
Oh, 2001.
That's when. So it was much later. But there's been a commerce. It's been the business school, the commerce school.
It's had many incarnations.
Yeah.
You know this lady who just passed away, Rosenberg. She was the first woman graduate from commerce. Faye Rosenberg's mother.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was she?
Yeah. In 1945, she was the first.
I think it was an obituary. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. She was the first woman grad ever, first Jewish grad
of commerce.
Yeah. So it was it's a fascinating. I don't know, maybe not Jewish, but first woman for sure. To graduate from college.
Well, she would have been the first Jewish woman.
Yes, so for
first
sure.
woman. If she's Jewish, then by definition.
No, what I meant was.
That's your legal background coming to the fore.
Yeah. So, anyways, fast forward to 2000, and when we started to create the Asper Center, model it very much on the center over here. I don't know if you remember the BIS camps that we used to do in the summer over here for kids from the inner city. We used to teach them entrepreneurship over 2 or 3 weeks, and it really changed the lives of many. So we took that idea, and fortunately, for the Asper and the Asper trustees, they're very sort of, what should I say, entrepreneurial in themselves, in that they're prepared to take risk. So one of the biggest risks we took was to provide this sort of BIS camp training for women, Arab women in East Jerusalem. So we ended up sort of doing the same kind of training, for over several months. You have no idea what we had to go through to get these women to come into a classroom. They had to be escorted by a brother or by their husbands, and they could only, all the women had to be studying together. They could not mix with men. We had to go through the chiefs of the Arab villages to get them involved.
And we had a really great partner, an Arab business person who was, very passionate about this, and so he was really happy to work with the Hebrew U and with us to sort of be the face of this program and encourage women to come into it. We actually wanted men and women doing this kind of business.
Is this to create cottage industries among the Arab?
To self-employed, basically microfinance.
Microfinancing. So, were you involved in financing too?
I'm going to come to that. So Gail went to a graduation, and we had 30 of them come. And they said to Gail, you know what, it's fine, you guys, you've given us some great training. But she appealed to Gail and said, but what about the money? We don't have even anything.
And Mo knows I can't say no. Like, he only takes me to some things where it's not going to get us into too much trouble, because they just zeroed in on me and said, what are we supposed to do? I want to open my flower shop, I want to open my salon, I want to do my embroidery, but I don't have money to buy the materials. We have to do this microfinancing stuff, which is a little more complicated, because then you're basically into kind of a loan situation where you have to really assess the people. It's one thing to just be running a classroom,
but they have a tremendous track record, these microfinancing corporations.
Yeah, so we said, okay, let's look into it, and then we got into the whole issue about the Green Line.
Were some of these women from beyond the Green Line?
They were all in Arab East Jerusalem. These are basically,
which again is just like
that's not the Green Line.
Well, but you look
for the Arabs, it is.
Yeah. But when you look at East Jerusalem, they came out of the East Jerusalem part of it.
Yeah.
Israel took over in 1967, so the banks consider that sort of a no man's sort of land, and they're not going to go into that. So the Israeli banks won't give them microfinancing. The Arab banks, which we even approached, would not give them the microfinancing. So through this very convoluted way, we got money through the Hebrew University, through the Jerusalem Development Corporation, and the Jerusalem Development Corporation.
Wasn't it Jerusalem Foundation?
The Jerusalem Foundation who connected us with the Jerusalem Development Corporation, and then they were the ones who do this kind of work.
And this is starting when, around 2001, you said? Or?
No, this is about 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's been a hugely successful program. And, some of these women now are making 2 or 3 times what their husbands are making.
Which is a problem sometimes.
Yeah, it is a huge problem. I went into this one Arab village in Surbaka, and I couldn't believe this woman basically she owned this and this and this. She started with a flower shop, and now she's got a gift shop, and she has women sewing for her, like stuff that the women wear, and for the tourists. Unbelievable. And like she said to me how she was making about 7,000 or 8,000 shekels a month, and her husband was making 2,000 shekels a month.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's those are the kinds of things we've been doing with.
Have to go now.
Yeah, but the kind of things that we are continuing to do. Yishai is here. We're looking at sort of another new idea of writing business cases like the Harvard Business Review for the Israeli sort of startups.
Yeah.
So he's here because really I'm connecting him with the university over here, the Asper School here, to see how we can do Canadian startups and Israeli startups into sort of that Harvard Business Review model. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of creative stuff that we are continuing to do with at Hebrew U. So it's the problem with Hebrew U, and just sort of as an aside, it's a very science-oriented, medicine-oriented university. And it's the Einstein,
humanities,
the Einsteins and so on. The business school we're trying to elevate and bring it up to.
Is the business school on Scopus?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't recall seeing it, but I find Scopus extremely confusing.
Oh yeah.
No, I go there every year and I still get completely lost.
Yeah.
But it's Jerusalem. They need to have a good business school, and they have it. And it just these kinds of things augment the experience for the students. And going to the Hebrew U is an incredible.
Have there been any Winnipeggers who've gone to the business school that you know of?
I don't know if you know Gadi Jacoby.
Yeah.
Gadi was a grad, but not because of us.
But he would have graduated before he came to Winnipeg,
yes,
I imagine.
He got his finance degrees from Hebrew University, actually.
That concludes my portion of the Jewish Radio Hour this week. Now stay tuned for Rochelle Zucker and the second half of the program in Yiddish. Until the next time, this is Bernie Bellin saying Azai Gesund.